chair of the event, Honorable Professor Marcus, who, apart from being a very close and dear friend of the Gayatri Parivar, Deva Sanskrit University, and Shantikunj Haridwar, is also one of the most thoughtful and insightful orators and leaders of a very unique tradition of science and spirituality working together, which also had been the fabric and ethos of this university. So, to him and all my brothers and sisters from different parts of the world, all the distinguished speakers, and also the students and staff of Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, good afternoon to all of you, and my very respectful pranams from Shantikunj Haridwar Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, India. First of all, I would like to convey our gratitude, congratulations, and thanks to Professor Marcus Schmike for organizing this webinar, series of webinars through our joint platform of Deva Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya and ECR Berlin together on a theme that I believe is also serving as the foundation of both institutions. It's like working on the physical and metaphysical aspects of consciousness together. And this theme is most pertinent, most timely, and also doing the justice to the essential foundation of both the institutions. And when I'm sending this message to you from the lap of Maganga, foothills of colossal Himalayas, and from Shantikunj, which serves as the headquarters of Gayatri Parivar of 150 million members all across the globe, then I believe that this kind of initiative would create uh, a new beginning, a new beginning in the direction where the entire humanity needs to reach, if not today, then tomorrow. And the theme of consciousness that Professor Schmike has chosen to talk about for today is a very special one. A special one because when we think of the most difficult physical, metaphysical problems that are encountered by the mankind, then we have got a long list to go. But in that long list, in my modest opinion, only one of them have the quality and authority, undisputable authority to be called as the toughest problem of all. And that problem is the problem of consciousness, especially how would you define it? How would you measure it? Because that has not only baffled the scientists, but also the seekers of spiritual truth. I believe that both are equally searching for the answers with the same desperation and same dedication and same devotion. From a scientific point of view, if we take, the question arises that how this 1370 grams of nerve cells that we call as the brain, how that could besiege a magical display of sensations, thoughts, emotions, perception that not only capture our imagination, it's all being created by the consciousness, but it also create a notion of I, self, me, that I exist, and this is coming out of the consciousness. Now the problem is that how this could be defined. This is not easy, and that is why the famous British psychologists, those of you who are fond of reading about consciousness, they would remember that the famous psychologist called Sutherland, Professor Sutherland, in 1980s, he said that consciousness is a fascinating but elusive phenomena. It is impossible to specify what it is, what it does, and why it evolved. And he said nothing worth reading about it has ever been written. So you can imagine. You can imagine that, that so difficult to find. But now we have moved a lot actually from those pessimistic days, and now after series of medical and research interventions in this area, especially like the split brain studies and the Libet's experiment, and also the landmark paper of Crick and Cox on the neurobiological theory of the consciousness, they all have got their own contributions in their own way, but it created a better understanding than what we used to have in 1980s, especially in the role of the brain areas that are implicated in the generation of the consciousness. And now we know that there are mainly three such areas. Thalamus is involved, lateral prefrontal cortex is involved, and posterior parietal cortex is involved. and they all have got their important roles to play in generating what we call as the consciousness. And for those of you who may not be so familiar with these anatomical regions that I'm talking about, thalamus is a small structure that just lies above the brainstem, and its primary role lies in regulating our motor and language systems. And later prefrontal cortex, you can call, he's the, he's the Toscanini. He's the Herbert von Karajan. He's the musical conductor. He takes the messages from everyone and he conducts the entire orchestra of the brain. He's involved in executive functioning, planning, decision making. But most importantly, expression of I being I, my expression of personality. It is basically the brain region which carefully orchestrates thoughts and actions in accordance to my inner being, how I would like to present myself, what are my thoughts, how the thoughts and emotions and my beliefs are being, conveyed to you. This all being, what I'm doing right now is being done through the prefrontal cortex. And my attention and spatial reasoning, they are being monitored by the posterior parietal cortex. Now, they all have their own roles, but what is exciting that they have more connections with each other and to elsewhere in the brain than any other region of the brain. They are the hubs, which means that these areas, they are suitably placed to receive, combine, analyze information from the rest of the brain. And these connections with each other create a sensation of togetherness, wholesomeness. They create a, they take the information from everywhere, from different sensory inputs that is coming, and they put that into a meaningful experience. Otherwise, imagine, if you have got only thoughts coming and they are going there, if you only see the things and they are going in a different way, if you only hear the things and there is no cohesion between them, I can't put them into one single context, then it would be chaos. It would be a nightmare. And to put that into a meaningful experience where different sensory inputs that I am receiving, they all turn into a meaningful experience, is the duty of these three areas. In simple words, they are turning the sensation into perception. We are receiving sensation all the time, but to turn that into perception requires a special effort, and that is done through these three areas that are now being implicated into the areas of the consciousness. Now, the reason I am actually bringing that and why the role that we play in making that understood to everyone is because this dichotomy of external and inner being was long, long ago talked about in the Vedanta, in the Sankhya, in the Yoga Sutra. Antahakarana Chatushtaya, they called it. Mana Buddhi Chitta and Ahankar. And it was that the same kind of role is being played by them. So we had Mana, Buddhi, Chitta and Ahankar. These four are called as the Antahakarana Chatushtaya. Antahakarana means inner being. Chatuh means four. So these four together. Mana is the mind. And what is the duty of the mind? Duty of the mind was actually to analyze all these pieces of information that we are receiving from different senses. We are receiving it from touch, smell, vision, auditory, all of them, and to analyze them together and put that into a sensible piece of information. That is why the mind was there. That's why it is still considered as one of the other indriya, other senses in the Indian wisdom tradition. Buddhi was the intelligence. Its duty was to make the executive functioning, to see that among all the information that we receive through mind, which is important and which is not important. You are receiving all the information. I am talking to you. In the same time, I'm also hearing the clock ticking. I'm also hearing the light flickering. I hear the people walking behind on the road. All this information is coming, but not all of them is important. How would I decide that which of them is important right now? Is the duty of the intelligence. Then Chit is where the sanskars are stored, and Ahankar is where the concept of I is there. And this was created long time ago. So basically, outer being to inner being, sensation to perception was the duty of the consciousness. And that duty of the consciousness was long time ago talked about by the Indian wisdom traditions, and we would like to do further research not only on the qualitative but also on the quantitative aspect of how that could be understood in the modern terms. Now, the question arises that how does the brain knit together all these discrete pieces of information? And the most accepted the medical model at present suggests that various neurons they start flickering together, they start firing together. One moment, like the sensation is being turned into perception, they are doing it together. And this is called global neuronal workplace model. And the idea was that the sensory inputs are being first processed unconsciously. So we hear, we see everything, and it goes there in the subconscious, but it becomes available to the conscious awareness only if there is an activity in the prefrontal or parietal centers. That's why, like if you're doing something on the first time, then you need your conscious awareness. You're driving for the first time, you're fully attentive, but then after a while it becomes a second nature. Then it can be done through the unconscious. You are uh, doing anything that requires your full attention, even playing a game, even like riding a bicycle. First time, full attention. Moment you become master of it, then it becomes the part of the unconscious. Then the conscious awareness parts of the brain do not need to be bothered. It could be done through the subconscious. It's a great advantage, evolutionary advantage, but a problem when we start to treat life as also an unconscious model, like everything then becomes a habit. We live like a zombie. We do exactly the same routine. The concept of purpose, motive, agenda, everything is gone. And that's why Yoga Sutras they talked about the concept of abhyas. So when Patanjali has been asked that what is the way when the oscillations of the mind could be calmed down, then he says in the first chapter, 12th verse, abhyas vairagya abhyam cha tannirodha, that two things together, vairagya, detachment, dispassion, and abhyas. Abhyas is the practice, doing it again and again. It actually makes the mind completely calm, stable, and in yoga. So he says that abhyas satu dirgha kala nirantara satkara sevita chadradbhume. He says abhyas is the one which is done with same love, same respect, non-stop, with no end in sight, constantly. Then only it becomes firmly rooted in our practice, in our life, in our personality. And that is the idea of the abhyas. Idea of the abhyas to do everything again and again till you become consciously aware of it. And that is the idea of the consciousness. Idea of the consciousness is to help us, like be united with our real purpose from a yogic point of view. And one of the burning issues that comes in this respect is the issue of the self-awareness, which makes our intelligence different than of the animals. This ability is called introspection or metacognition, which is an ability of self-reflecting. Scientifically, it's very difficult to measure, because if you measure that, it's impossible to know whether you are measuring your ability to self-aware or you are measuring your uh, you being aware of being self-aware. There comes a very beautiful story, and with that I will end today's message. The story is the story of a boy called Shwetaketu. And Shwetaketu was a famous boy. He topped the Takshila University, the ancient university in India, well known for its great alumni. And he topped it, returned home with the great pride that I know everything. I know Vedas, Purans, Upanishads, and everything. His guru said that you know everything, but have you seen God? He said, no, I haven't. He said, do you want to see God? He said, yeah, I would like to. He said that he got a glass of water and some pieces of sugar cube. He mixed them inside. He said, where is the sugar now? Guru said. Shwetketu said, you mixed in front of me, but I can't see it. He said, how would you know that sugar is inside? He said, I will taste the water. The sweetness would tell me that the sugar is inside. So Guru said, same is with the God. He said, he's mixed in the air and he's mixed in the prana. Neither you can see the air nor you can see the prana. Vayu, prana, they both mixed. He said, you can't see it, but you can feel it. He said, divinity is not a science of expression. You don't need words. It is a science of experience. You need to feel it. And that God is inside you, he said. Tat Tumasi. Soham, also inside me. And when Shwetketu realized, he famously uttered, he said, Aham Brahmasmi, I am that divine. And that divine consciousness, which is everywhere, in you, in me, in every soul, is the idea of the Vedantic way of understanding the consciousness. Scientific way to define is the one which changes the sensation into perception, which makes us consciously aware of something. And from a spiritual point of view, what makes us consciously aware of something is no different than the divine consciousness. So let us embark on this journey together to find, to reach to that perfect model where the medical understanding of the anatomical areas of the brain or scientific view to see it would also be able to marry with a spiritual way and metaphysical and philosophical way of understanding the consciousness. Good luck to everyone. My respectful pranams again from Shanti Kunj Haridwar with a warm invitation that this is the year of 50th year of the establishment of Shanti Kunj Haridwar, and it is falling in a very beautiful time of the Purna Kumbh of Haridwar. So with